Bitcoin is making some big news this week, and the world is hearing about Bitcoin because of the HBO hacking and the Bitcoin ransom attacks. Because of the Fidelity account connection to Bitcoin via the Coinbase, of course, and because of the news that Russia and Putin want to overtake China in terms of global dominance of the SHA-256 Bitcoin mining. But in the traditional parts of the financial technology industry, outside the world of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, the computer networks for the SEC's financial systems are at unnecessary risk of compromise and may jeopardize the availability of information residing and processed by the SEC. As this congressional watchdog report from the Government Accountability Office details, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is Wall Street's top U.S. regulator, needs to protect and secure its data networks, or its control over its financial systems and its data will continue to be at risk. So as more people are hearing about Bitcoin, either again or for the first time, due to the HBO hacking or the WannaCry malware virus, is it a reasonable concern to wonder about the network security of the SEC's financial systems? And in an interconnected financial network, could a hypothetical cyber attack on the SEC spread to other central banking computers, crippling our nation's payment networks? All that and so much more. Let's discuss. Do you want me to do it? should we just go out to show like this?
Yes.
All right. No more takes. I'm Gary Palmer Jr. You're you. And together, welcome to Minty Coins. All right, so a few technical difficulties. We upgrade some things and other things fall apart. It's hilarious. And it's a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of the fun. And we're just going to get this show on the road. Hopefully the lag picks up a little bit, but the audio usually comes in pretty clear. Let me know how bad the white noise is. It's the computer humming, trying to get a little bit of distance there. We're working on getting this going. But with that being said, there's a lot going on in the news, and there's a lot that we're going to be covering in today's episode. We really want to get to the meat and the potatoes about this GAO report, this report from the Government Accountability Office, concerning the SEC and the computer networks of the SEC. And it's interesting because a lot of people have talked about all the hacking attacks and places like banking systems, and but then you have Home Depot and Target of the world, just medium-sized, large businesses, all sorts of businesses, credit card information, people's personal identity, all that being attacked and hacked. Why? So people can get a financial gain, an edge into stealing people's financial information. They're either for stealing credit or stealing actual cash or stealing identities to access systems. There's a whole lot of reasons. So with the SEC's computers and with the banking system's computers, I suppose that there's not maybe a lot of this regulation on the banking systems, and if the SEC's computers are vulnerable, it really makes you wonder about the central banking computers and the banking computers all around the world. And with all of our money being so digital and being someone in the cryptocurrency space, we could imagine if the whole internet went down, then no one would be able to access their Bitcoin, right? Well, what if it was a segment of the internet? What if it was just all the financial networks in the world that went down for a couple days? And then how would people access their money from the ATMs? So it's really, really interesting, and we're going to get to that. But before we do, there's a lot we want to cover with the market, and there's a lot we want to cover just touching upon some other big things that are happening in the news. So let's speed through some of this while really diving deep into other aspects of what's going on. So with that being said, let's take a look at the market, pop into the news, and let's discuss. Okay, so starting over at coinmarketcap.com, we have a total cryptocurrency market still hovering over $120 billion. We have $123 billion with the past 24-hour trading, $4.7 billion, and a Bitcoin dominance at 45%. So the volume is healthy to relatively high compared to how we usually see it. The market cap is up and pretty steady over that 120 mark, and the Bitcoin dominance is also, I'd say, pretty strong comparably from where it's been over the, past 4 to 6 months. And so I'd say 45.7% is relatively healthy considering how many different other cryptocurrencies and ICOs there are out there, and also considering how healthy Ethereum is and how much money is pumping into there. So looking at some of the coins specifically, starting with Bitcoin, BTC, we have Bitcoin at $3,400, up 2% over the past 24 hours, the same as Ether. And a lot of the other coins are down. We have NEO, which a lot of us know is a rebranding of Ant shares. And yeah, they're doing great. They've had a huge spike up. I think a lot of people are really excited about the news that's coming from NEO and what's happening out of China, and things that are perhaps connected with NEO and EOS. But we'll continue to keep an eye on that. It's really interesting for the space, but there's so much going on that we're gonna just continue our attention with some other news for this video. So looking over in terms of the Bitcoin price, I want to start doing this and just real quick as we're going over these high-level numbers. So every day when we're taking a peek at them, we can get a sense for if they're going up or if they're going down. So instead of just having one a data point of one day and seeing this video for the first time and just hearing $123 billion market cap, going over this every day, we're going to get a feel for what's high and what's low, and it's definitely going to help a lot. And that's also the exact same reason why we want to look at this information in Bitcoin. So right here, this big blue box, you can change it from USD to BTC, and you can see these exact prices in Bitcoin. So let's see here. So, and this is exactly why. So let me just show you this, and then we'll move on. Ethereum in USD. So when we look at the Ether price in USD, it's $300, and in USD, it's up 2%. Just like NEO is up 49%. And then when we look at this in BTC, Ethereum is actually down slightly relative to Bitcoin. And NEO is also very, very strong, slightly lower relative to Bitcoin. But Ethereum is actually in the red when you compare it relative to Bitcoin. And so I would just, encourage people to, have their portfolios relative to Bitcoin instead of relative to your native fiat currency, in terms of understanding how well you're doing if you're investing in any of the other cryptocurrencies besides Bitcoin. And speaking of Bitcoin, speaking of different ways to put your money that's not fiat money, Bitcoin is now worth nearly 3 times more than an ounce of gold, according to this one article coming out of Coindesk.com. Nearly 3 times the ounce of an ounce of gold, and so there's a lot more gold in the world than there are ounces of Bitcoin. There's more gold in the world than there are whole Bitcoins. But it's still really interesting in terms of an investment in a vehicle to see the performance and the pace of Bitcoin, relative to everything else. And that's why we see hedge fund managers and investors, really taking a strong eye at Bitcoin. Even with all of the negative news that's happening, people are still recognizing that it definitely has value and it definitely has demand, and apparently it's pretty liquid as well. And so then there was a segment on CNBC calling Bitcoin the new gold. And so this sort of is a dog whistle for some people in terms of what that means when people call Bitcoin the new gold and what it means to be the new gold. And CNBC is predicting Bitcoin to outperform the US stock market for the rest of the year. Very, very interesting. Why would anybody invest into the stock market or the S&P or the NASDAQ or the Dow Jones when they're sort of seeing news like this? Or why, at the very least, why would any smart investor put 100% of their money into, say, the stocks and put 0% into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency? When they're hearing information like this, it just doesn't make sense. And then, again, here's a pretty cool screenshot that I saw someone post on Reddit. I don't watch a lot of cable television or really any cable television myself. But, this is what people are seeing. And they're seeing, closing bell, CNBC, Fidelity's bet on Bitcoin. And, has a nice ring to it. And this isn't just a message that consumers are seeing and that businesses are seeing, but this is a message that hedge funds and financial institutions are seeing, that they're recognizing that Fidelity is taking a huge risk. And everyone knows if you take a huge risk, then there must be the potential of a huge opportunity. And I'm sure none of these other financial institutions want to get, blockbustered or what else we got? Blockbustered or, just not knocked out of the competition. So turning over into today's news and pivoting from the market, we have this one article here talking about how from Overstock now accepts more top cryptocurrencies via the Shapeshift exchange. And so this is some really interesting news from finance magnates, and so this is something that people are reading, that Overstock is accepting cryptocurrencies, that people can spend cryptocurrencies in Overstock, that it's not just Bitcoin, and it's the first major U.S. retailer to accept multiple cryptocurrencies as payment. Now, I suppose the one question that really comes to mind is how annoying is this article title? How annoying is this fact now to Jeff Bezos and Amazon that Overstock is the first to accept multiple cryptocurrencies and not Amazon for accepting Bitcoin and Litecoin and Dash and Monero? It really seems, in the best interest and the giving these businesses an advantage. If you know any businesses, if you have a business, are you accepting Bitcoin? Are you accepting cryptocurrency? What's holding you back? Or if you're just a straight up consumer, are you encouraging businesses to accept cryptocurrency? Because this is just going to give them a huge edge, just like having a website. Not every plumber needed a website back in 1996. Not every electrician or massage therapist or a business needed a website necessarily in the year 2000. But I think the writing was on the wall, and they definitely recognized it. And the businesses that did have those websites were succeeding in the top search engines like Yahoo and websites like that, early Google even. And so we have this news coming out of Russia, and this is just huge. I can't really emphasize how important this is, that Russia is squaring off with China, according to this article from Bitcoinist.com, in a battle for Bitcoin mining supremacy. And so what's going on here is that an aide to Russia's President Putin is seeking to raise over $100 million potentially through an ICO. Of course, why not? And he's doing this in a bid to help dethrone China as the country with the biggest Bitcoin mining industry. I think they're seeking to have as much as 30% of the total Bitcoin mining operation happen out of Russia. And you got to imagine, with like so much mining already happening and with so much of that mining already happening in China, for anyone to just take such a large piece of the pie would just take an incredible amount of money and an incredible effort. But at the same time, if someone put that investment in now, and if it was not just a person, but essentially a country or this giant business that's directly connected with the country because it's, friends with Putin, right? Then this is essentially the national endorsement, and the country of Russia opening up a gold mining operation, a global gold mining operation right on their own soil with their own electricity. And so Putin has warmed up to the whole blockchain technology. We know Putin has met with Vitalik Buterin, and that Vitalik is native Russian, Canadian citizen, native Russian, and that there's Putin wants Russia to be the Silicon Valley of blockchain technology, for the future to come. And so Putin has extended his support for the adoption through local partners, and this is again his one of his friends, his aide even. And so many believe that these developments indicate Russia's predisposition to replace the United States dollar with Bitcoin as a reserve asset. So a lot of people have been talking about this for a long time, and we've been talking about this on this channel since the very beginning. When we see countries start to accept Bitcoin or start to mine Bitcoin as a reserve currency, it's going to start to escalate different countries around the world to, the fear of missing out and the fear that their country is going to be left behind and that their country is going to not have Bitcoin, to compete, especially if Russia is accepting Bitcoin and then Russia is mining Bitcoin and Russia has infrastructure to support Bitcoin with processes and procedures and people to, just allow the market to not just exist, but to flourish. And so there is this one tweet that was out there from Brian Kelly who says, I guess sooner than I thought, this is effectively Russia beginning to buy Bitcoin as a reserve asset. Just very, very interesting. This is interesting to me, this is interesting to you, this is interesting to businesses, but most of all, this has to be interesting to the different countries. And I really wonder, not that maybe we'll find out, but I really wonder how long will it take these countries to, get adrift and catch what's happening, and to for them to also take action. And then we're going to start seeing that in the difficulty level of mining Bitcoin, and then we're also going to see that in the overall demand and value for each Bitcoin. And so again, if everybody wanted one Bitcoin, we can see, a very, very, very I wouldn't say moonshot Bitcoin, but if everyone, it's just, if everybody wanted one Bitcoin, it can't happen. So a lot of people have been hearing about Bitcoin, and some people have been mentioning this to me who know I talk about Bitcoin. Whenever there's bad news, people, they text me, they email me, they call me, they're like, hey, did you hear about that Bitcoin, or did you hear about this, did you hear about that? And it's like, yes, I heard about it. And so a few weeks ago we had the WannaCry virus, and so not necessarily a super sophisticated operation using some really super sophisticated software, and they didn't really make out with a lot of Bitcoin. But what they did do is have an incredible PR campaign for Bitcoin that just connected it with negative associations and negative feelings and negative logic. So people have a predisposition of recognizing Bitcoin, connected to the hacking attempt, and now to reinforce that news that just happened a couple of weeks ago, they have this to reinforce it, which is that hackers have been shaking down HBO for Bitcoin. And if you go a little bit deeper into this article, just checking out the mentions of Bitcoin, as to how HBO should pay, the ransom note left nothing in doubt. The pseudonymous cryptocurrency has long been a favorite of ransomware authors. And then down here in orange, as we saw with the WannaCry ransomware, Bitcoin ransom can be quickly moved, and there are numerous ways to launder it. So the point of this is that this is mass association. This is Mashable. This has been everywhere. Everyone's been talking about this, and this is just, seeds in the minds of the masses with negative imagery and negative association of Bitcoin with the world. And so if that's the case, then I don't, I think we'd be hearing good things about Bitcoin. I think that if we're hearing negative things about Bitcoin, then that still means that we're being pushed away from Bitcoin. And so if there are any nefarious sort of cryptocurrencies out there, I really think it would be something that's not necessarily Bitcoin. And it's really interesting because, is a nation really going to use Bitcoin, or is a nation going to use their own coin? We had a couple videos out recently talking about how the Treasury and the Federal Reserve Bank actually they were looking for ways to increase the payment networks for faster payment networks. And they were talking about Fed notes instead of Fed coin. They were calling it a Fed note. And and so that would all be probably printed and managed through the SEC, or managed through the policy set through the Federal Reserve banks in America, and then the issuance and the governance through the guidance of the federal banks, but oversaw by the SEC through the Treasury, something to that effect. And so we just had this report come out from the GAO, which is the U.S. Government Accountability Office. And so the Government Accountability Office reviews what's happening in the government and just looks for either issues or opportunities, and then details what those are, and then comes up with recommendations so that the different systems of government can be better in the ideal utopia that we all want to be living in. So with that, let's go over this. So this is an information security post from the SEC, improved control of financial systems, but they need to take additional actions. And so this was just published in July 27th, so it's just about a week old. And so in this, it does note that the Commission, the SEC, has resolved 47 of the past 58 recommendations, but the SEC has not fully implemented 11 of the other recommendations. And so what the SEC has not fully implemented includes protecting its boundaries from possible intrusions, identifying and authenticating users, authorizing access to resources, auditing and monitoring actions taken on its systems and its networks, or encrypting sensitive information while in transmission. Additionally, there were 15 new deficiencies, control deficiencies, that were limiting the effectiveness of the SEC for protecting the confidentiality, protecting the integrity, and also protecting the availability of the SEC's information in its systems online. And so the SEC Commission did not consistently control the logical access to its financial and general support systems. The Commission did enhance its configuration for its management controls, interesting enough, but it used unsupported software to process the financial data. Very interesting. And further, the SEC did not adequately segregate the different elements of its information security program. And so, for example, the SEC did not maintain up-to-date network diagrams and asset inventories or system security plans, and its key financial system application to accurately and completely reflect the current operating environment. The Commission also did not fully implement and continuously monitor those systems' security configurations. So these security configurations are just totally being left unmonitored. What is happening with the network access is just not really being monitored. Information is not being detailed, and so people probably aren't sure exactly, they don't know what they don't know if these controls aren't there. And just lots of different deficiencies in this system. And so what the GAO is saying is that altogether these deficiencies decrease the assurance about the reliability of the data processed by the SEC. And they, in this report, they stress that individually none of these are necessarily a problem, but collectively this all adds up to constitute as a material weakness or a significant deficiency. Which could it be? a material weakness or a significant deficiency. I mean, you only have it might have fallen on the floor, or it could kill you. So these deficiencies warrant the SEC management's attention, and until the SEC mitigates these deficiencies, its financial systems and information systems will continue to be an unnecessary risk. And so, and so the SEC is just, has these systems, and they've been receiving the guidelines of exactly what needs to happen to resolve some of these issues. And what we're seeing from this report is that these issues have not been resolved. And so, we know from reading this that this isn't new, and so this isn't the first time that the SEC has heard about these, even though this has been published on July 27th. We actually had this other GAO report that had come out in April of last year, and this one, and these come out all the time. You can go to this website. These links will be in the show notes below, and you can check out more of these. But this is another information security opportunities exist for the SEC to improve the control over its financial systems and data. Same sort of gist, just going into a lot of the material from that time, where this more updated one is going over the latest. And so the latest news is that there's definitely weaknesses in the system, and those weaknesses are critical against hackers. We know how easy it is for central points of access, for central points into a network, for a person at a coffee shop, a single person clicking on a single email inside an office. I mean, there's so many different ways that so many really smart people and really reputable companies get hacked and get intruded. And the SEC apparently has systems, and that we're finding out because it's part of the government. This is all public information. Has systems that hackers from independent hackers from no country, or hackers from a particular country, a person or a country or independent organization that has reason to do, maybe the United States harm, could cripple us, by turning off money. And so it's definitely a concern, and it's definitely something that, perhaps people should be aware of. So this is also talked about in Reuters. And so this is out there with some attention. What was sort of interesting to me about this article is that it starts off with a 27-page report by the GAO, but the report's actually 26 pages. And so it's the one sort of conflict of information that sort of made this research a little bit difficult. And anyway, everybody's referring to it as a 27-page report, so maybe there's an extra cover page from a fax machine or something that everybody's counting that I don't know about. But that's neither here nor there. But this article is, again, just reinforcing some of these points about the SEC's systems that, quote, the information security control deficiencies in the SEC computing environment may jeopardize, again, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information processed on its systems and on its systems. And that the SEC is at unnecessary risk for compromise. So it's just really scary, to think about hacking in financial systems. It's really scary to think about hacking inside of healthcare systems. It's really scary to think about hacking inside of, say our cars. Some people have maybe a Bluetooth pacemaker in the future, and that could be, really scary for, your pacemaker to get hacked. Or some sort of medical device inside your body. But the financial system is just a major component of what's going on. And some people, talk about, the risk of hackers hacking the financial system. And, one Friday, just the banks having to shut down and then having to reboot the computers. And, if there was a problem with the SEC's financial system or one of the different banks, could that virus then worm its way through the other computers, causing mass havoc and some level of devastation? It's definitely a risk, and it's definitely something for us to be aware of. Computer records, money records, how much money is out there, how much stock is out there. I mean, all this is digital. All our money is digital. If anything happened with money, wherever the databases for money in the world are for dollars, right? I mean, if that all got erased, like how would anyone know how much money there is in the world? Where Bitcoin, you know, no one's really controlling that, and everyone in the world has a copy of that ledger from all the different nodes and the miners in the world who are running Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin is just a really powerful asset in terms of its ability to cross borders. Bitcoin is a really powerful asset in terms of its longevity and its ability to exist everywhere and nowhere. And Bitcoin is really strong in terms of its inhackability, in the sense that no one's going to be able to, you know, hack Bitcoin the way that a single centralized point of control can be hacked, because no one really controls Bitcoin. We see Russia getting into the mining Bitcoin game, and Russia is seeking to hold like 30% of all that mining power. Russia is not going to be able to control Bitcoin with just 30% of that mining power, but if, you know, Russia has 30% and China has, you know, 30%, well, that's still just 60%, and it would still be very, very difficult. You would just need many, many more transactions to be safe about, you know, to be sure that a transaction is confirmed. You might want more than 6 confirmations that that was the case, but they wouldn't necessarily be able to just do everything they wanted without, you know, creating yet another hard fork of Bitcoin. And, you know, like, who's going to follow just a Russia coin, right? It's like China wouldn't follow just the Russia's coin, and Russia's not going to follow just the China coin. So Russia and China are both going to have to continue following the main Bitcoin, because that's going to give everyone the safety and the security. And so it's really, really interesting, because everyone has this opportunity to grab one Bitcoin and to be part of this Bitcoin game before all these countries start mining it, and before all the citizens of those countries start realizing, wow, maybe we should get one Bitcoin. And the government has an, you know, interest in having all of their citizens have one Bitcoin to create a national wealth system, the likes of which the world has never seen. And so it sort of gets us into, you know, realizing what Bitcoin means and recognizing what Bitcoin means for us and for the world. And, you know, there's this meme over here, when you realize what Bitcoin means. And it's just revolutionary. It's sort of profound to think that you can have this cryptocurrency, and you can have it exist everywhere, and you can have it exist nowhere, and it's borderless, and it represents freedom, and it represents you know, thinking and creating and giving, and yeah, and so it's really, really interesting stuff. And so what does this mean? How should we all tie it together? Well, there was this one Reddit post. We were talking about this in the last video. How do I equip my store to accept Bitcoin? So this person's saying, I have a bakery and I want to accept payments. How do I set this up? What options do I have for POS systems that enable me to accept Bitcoin as a payment? And so we've talked about this. There's, you know, all sorts of different point of sale systems out there that integrate with Coinbase, or that integrate with different Bitcoin payment systems to allow you to accept Bitcoin at your business. And so I'll have this article in the show notes below if you want to take a deeper look. But you know, there's all sorts of ideas in the suggestions below, everything from BitPay to Braintree. And I personally hear lots of good things about BitPay myself. And you can get a wallet at bitpay.com/wallet. Really, really cool stuff. Yeah, and so that's what's going on. And that's what's happening in the Bitcoin space, and that's what's happening in the, you know, I guess it's, you know, where the cryptocurrency industry meets the, you know, traditional financial technology industry. And, you know, and here we see Fidelity getting involved in Bitcoin. We see Russia and Putin getting even deeper involved into cryptocurrency overall, and now specifically deeply involved in Bitcoin. And we see all sorts of other news around Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, let it be good news or let it be bad news. There's a lot happening in this space. And so if you're recognizing that then continue learning, continue getting more information. At some point, consider taking some sort of action, and some of that action could be liking this video or leaving a comment below, letting me know what do you think about what's going on, what do you think about this news with the SEC, what do you think about this news with Russia and Putin, and I don't know. Where do you think this goes next? Do you think that Bitcoin becomes a world reserve currency? Do you think that we're going to start seeing another country start accepting Bitcoin? We already started seeing Japan accept Bitcoin nationwide, but do you think we could hear Japan starting to accept Bitcoin as a national reserve? So much going on. So much more going on that we actually know about happening in the news. We have many, many more videos coming on the way. There's so much happening. We are excited to share with you. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being a part of this video. Again, share your comments below. Check us out on Steemit. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And I'm glad that together we're minting coins.